Hello everyone and welcome to another casual review. Today we're talking about The Last of Us Part 1. Here I am to talk about Jak and Daxter's sequel. Just kidding, but they are both made by Naughty Dog. It's a little hard to believe that I've never talked about The Last of Us before on this channel. I now own 3 different copies for this game, and I've played it maybe 5 or 6 different times. Now, don't get me wrong, I was one of the first people to scoff at The Last of Us getting a second remaster within a decade, but when I saw the game on the PlayStation 5 for, I think it was $18, I did get a little excited at the opportunity to play The Last of Us in the highest fidelity possible. For those of you who don't know, The Last of Us is originally a PlayStation 3 game that came out in 2013, I think, and then it was remastered to The Last of Us Remastered on the PlayStation 4, and now they have come out with The Last of Us Part 1, which is a remaster of the remaster to some degree for the PlayStation 5. If you have been living under a rock and have somehow never heard of The Last of Us before, basically it's an apocalyptic world where this fungal parasite called cordyceps that typically infects and mind controls things like ants has adapted to be able to mind control and consume humans, and it basically turns them into zombies, at least at first, and then as it mutates more in the human body, then they turn into these really creepy things called clickers that use like echolocation to see. And so the game is an apocalyptic survival horror game with a heavy zombie theme, even though they aren't like technically zombies. The game is really about our main protagonist named Joel, who is an older guy, and before the whole cordyceps infestation, he was just a hardworking guy with a daughter, and the outbreak day when everyone starts turning, he ends up losing his daughter. And so we skip forward like many years into the future, and he's actually a smuggler, smuggling goods like guns and food stamps and things like that out of the city of Boston. Him and another woman take on a job to smuggle an actual girl out of Boston, and this girl is our other main protagonist named Ellie. Now, this is kind of a spoiler, but you do find out pretty early on, you do find out that Ellie is actually immune to becoming infected because she was bitten 3 weeks ago, and that's like the longest anybody's ever gone without actually turning into one of these zombies. And so as Joel, you take on the role of kind of being Ellie's protector and escort as you are trying to take him to the rebellion group called the Fireflies, which say that they can make a cure for the infection, a vaccine, using Ellie's DNA. And so you're kind of like traveling across America, exploring this wasteland full of these zombies and scrounging for supplies and materials, all while you're trying to safely escort Ellie to hunt down wherever the Fireflies may be. Obviously, the cordyceps aren't the only type of danger you're going to be encountering while you are traveling across this apocalyptic wasteland. Raiders are arguably even more dangerous than the cordyceps because they have guns and they're unpredictable and sneaky. Ammo and gear is on short supply, and so you kind of want to scavenge around, open up drawers and cabinets, and whenever you're in an area, you're going to try and look for more ammo and supplies to craft different items. Oftentimes, you're going to be opening drawers and there's just like nothing in there, and as a gamer, you kind of feel owed something because when you're opening up a drawer, when you take that action, you expect to have something in the drawer, but it happens more often than not where there's just like nothing. And so you're really scrounging and saving up your ammo and resources for when you actually do need them. I would say that this game gets a ton of critical acclaim, and I don't want to oversell this game. It means a lot to me personally, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily because of just the gameplay. And so if you're the type of person that is gameplay first, story kind of takes a backseat, I don't think you're going to get as much out of this game as other people have who have constantly raved about it. And I feel like because this game and this series as a whole gets so much critical acclaim, I feel like a lot of people's expectations are really high when they go into this game, and they can come out feeling a little disappointed. Though I think for me personally, the really cool thing about this game is the atmosphere, the world building, and the characters themselves. Just this whole story between Joel and this younger girl, Ellie, and seeing how their relationship builds throughout the game. Because at first, Joel, he's very cold and he doesn't want to really be bonding with Ellie, obviously, because he lost his daughter at the beginning of the game. He doesn't want to open himself up to that kind of hurt again, and so he doesn't like really talk to Ellie. Ellie's just pretty much cargo that he's been paid to deliver to the Fireflies. But as you play through the game, you can see this relationship between these two characters really grow and foster to the point where he is kind of taking up this father role for Ellie. And it's really heartwarming to see that this cold and bitter old man just open himself up again to that kind of relationship. And Ellie is an awesome character as well. It's just so sad. You feel so bad for her because she was only born into this world, this apocalyptic world. She doesn't know anything before, and so she's constantly asking Joel, like, what were ice cream trucks like? What was it like to live this kind of life? And she just wants to be a kid. She's into these comic books, and she just wants to know what it's like to play a video game. But she's also just like such a likable person as well. She's just such a cool kid. As you are mostly going to be playing as Joel, you pretty much just like want to protect her and make sure she stays out of harm's way, because you really grow to like her as a character as well. And it's very difficult for a video game to get you to bond with the characters in the actual video game. And I think that the main reason that this game is so great at doing that is the dialogue and the voice actors for these two characters in particular are so believable and relatable. Like you end up just wanting what is completely best for these two characters. And the atmosphere in this game is also so intense as well. Just being in a super dark room with only your flashlight, and you're surrounded by these clickers making these terrible clicking noises as they are going around and looking for their next meal, and you don't want to like trigger any of these infected because it's super scary and intense. Or like when you're in the middle of like a bandit camp and they're all yelling out and calling for you because they're hunting you down. It's so intense and gritty and dark. But at the same time, on the other side of the coin here, they also give you a ton of time to breathe and just be outside in this cityscape that has been overtaken by nature. And you guys are just chatting about what it was like before the whole infection was in the world, and you see the sunbeams casting through the trees. And this is where I really think that The Last of Us Part 1, this version in particular, shines, is because like graphically it looks so awesome, and just when you're in the woods you can just see the little particles and leaves falling and that little animal scurrying across the ground, and it really does look so beautiful. The gameplay actually lends itself a lot to that atmosphere building, but I definitely want to say that the gameplay is the number one selling point here. It is a third-person shooter. The controls are pretty clunky, and it takes a while to get used to if you have played a lot of other shooter games, and I feel like the control scheme is clunky for a reason, just to kind of build on that tension. For instance, your backpack can only hold a certain number of guns before you actually have to like dig into your backpack and cycle between a different gun, and reloading is takes a while. Like you can't shoot in the middle of reloading necessarily, and so sometimes when you're in the middle of this big battle with infected or raiders, you're like digging through your backpack in a hurry trying to get the gun that you need, or trying to heal up your character with a first aid kit, and it's so clunky and slow, and so it builds up that tension because they're coming after you, they're chasing you, and you have to hurry and navigate through this backpack menu. It is a little difficult to aim, at least for me. It didn't have any of that help with you like auto-locking, auto-aiming as far as I can tell, and so it's very often that if you are freaking out because an infected is chasing after you or something, and you're just randomly firing off shots, you're gonna miss about 50% of the time. You really need to go into this with a clear mind, and oftentimes it is better to do these encounters very stealthily because you can take your time and you're not rushing to dig through your backpack or reload or whatever. Oftentimes you are able to like silently take down an enemy, which will save on ammo, but you're trying to like hurry and choke this guy out and hoping that none of his other buddies will see you choking this guy out. And so stealth is definitely your best best option, although it can take a while. And so, you know, by the time I've played this game as many times as I have, sometimes I just kind of go into it guns blazing. And I do feel like they are a little more generous with ammo than they'd leave you to believe. Like if you're low on a lot of ammo, I feel like enemies are more likely to drop more ammo for you, or you're able to scrounge up more ammo while you're scavenging around a room. And so you can kind of take either approach and it would be fine. Although I do think stealth is easier. It just takes longer to do that. There are some upgrades that you can give to Joel, mostly in the forms of upgrading his weapons, and you can upgrade Joel himself. There's a resource that's just like pills that you can find around the world as you are exploring, and you can use these pills in order to give Joel some certain benefits, like extra health, or give him the ability to stab a clicker if a clicker is about to eat you. Otherwise, it's pretty much an automatic death if a clicker gets up to you. The thing that I completely focus on every time I do play this game is I want to reduce the amount of weapon sway, and I feel like it really helps, even though it costs a lot of this pill resource. But once you finally do upgrade his weapon sway, I think it makes aiming significantly easier. The next thing that I usually upgrade is his listening distance, and it's pretty video gamey, but the idea is you can listen and it highlights where all the enemies are just in like a white glow, and so you can kind of see if they're on the other side of the wall, and you can like upgrade the distance to make the outlines of these enemies more definite, and you can see enemies that are farther away. This is one of the things that I suspect that they changed in this version of The Last of Us compared to the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4 version, where every time I'd play those previous versions, I feel like I was able to upgrade almost everything, if not everything, that Joel is able to be upgraded with these pills. In this game, I felt like I really had to pick and choose what I did want to upgrade, because I just didn't have enough pill resources to upgrade everything. And this may be because maybe I didn't spend enough time scavenging as much as I usually would, but there was a lot left over to be upgraded that I just was never able to get to. It's kind of the same with the upgrading weapons as well. Occasionally you will come across these workbenches, and as you are scavenging around, you'll find like these pieces of scrap that you can use to upgrade your weapons, whether it's like increasing the reload speed or the hit distance or the draw speed. So there's different like upgrades that you can do to your weapons at a workbench. And in the past, I feel like I have been able to upgrade pretty much all of my weapons. In this game, I had to like pick and choose what were my favorite weapons, what am I going to use the most often, what do I want to prioritize, because I don't think I was able to upgrade any weapon completely just because I was like bouncing around between the shotgun and the rifle and the bow and arrow. So I don't know if this version of the game in particular either increased the amount of resources that you needed or gave you more options for things to upgrade. They took a page out of The Last of Us Part 2, where when you are upgrading your weapon, it kind of does this cool little animation where it shows you like actually tweaking the weapon, like for your rifle, if you wanted to add a better scope, it shows Joel like unscrewing the old scope and putting on a new scope and screwing it on. I think this is a cool feature, a cool animation to make it like actually feel like you're upgrading your gun, compared to the previous versions of this game where it's kind of just, you're just going through a menu and it's just automatically upgrading. I do think it's a little funny. Some of these animations they don't seem like they would do a lot. Like if you were to increase the aim of a certain gun, you just kind of like wipe it down with a dirty cloth and then it's upgraded apparently. Like some of these upgrades are a lot more in-depth as others, but I don't know a lot about guns, but I don't think that wiping down one with a dirty cloth would do very much in terms of upgrades. In addition to like finding ammo and resources like scrap and pills, you're also going to be finding a lot of notes that have been left behind by other survivors or like audio recordings. And I know this is kind of a video game trope, just to give you a little peek into the lore of the world or the area that you're in, what exactly happened. I just don't know if I'm in an apocalypse setting and I'm like having a rebellion or like the building gets flooded with infected. I don't know if I'm going to take the time to write down and know exactly what was happening at the time, but it is nice because it gives you a peek into what happened in this hospital or this building. If you're lucky, sometimes you'll find notes and read them, and there'll be like codes to unlock safes that will give you a lot of resources as well. And if you're really lucky, you'll you'll find these survival books, and when you read them, they give you also permanent upgrades, like let your shivs last longer, give you more health, make your Molotov cocktails have a wider spread so they do more flame damage. And it really is like half of the time you're playing this game, you're just going to be sneaking around, scavenging, opening up drawers, looking for all these resources, because you kind of get FOMO if you don't. Like, I hate that feeling of getting kicked out of a room or accidentally leaving a room before I had fully explored everything, and then I'm locked out and I'm like, shoot, what did I just miss? What did I leave behind? And whenever I'm playing this game, even just because I haven't like memorized where everything is, I'm always searching through all the bathrooms. People who make video games love to hide things in bathrooms. They love to put things in stalls and toilets and stuff. So I'm always looking through those, looking through desks, which is why I was surprised that I wasn't able to either upgrade Joel or his weapons this time around. Another thing that I noticed that was different about this game than previous ones is they included a lot of things, I think, from The Last of Us Part 2. Like, for instance, if you are fighting an enemy human and it's like the last one and you shoot them but you don't kill them, they'll kind of fall on their back and say like, don't shoot me, please, show mercy. And the idea is you're supposed to like slowly walk up to them and kill them, and it's supposed to be like really gritty and brutal because that's just what The Last of Us is. And I typically don't like to be the bad guy if I don't have to. And so if a guy says like, please show mercy, don't kill me, we're good, I'm not gonna do anything, and I just walk away, they do that video game thing where they change their mind and then they just start shooting at you anyway. And so it doesn't really give you the option to show mercy. You're supposed to slowly walk up to them as they beg for mercy and then kill them. I feel like they made it more difficult to sneak around clickers as well, because clickers are infected who have been infected for a decent amount of time, and the idea is they're blind and can see through clicking and echolocation. But I feel like in previous games, you could walk pretty much right in front of them, and as long as you're going super slow, they won't pick up on you. That's not the case here. Like, clickers, if you're in front of their peripheral vision, they'll still see you and they'll still want to chase after you and activate them. And so it's kind of just like the runners who are just recently infected, where you have to like sneak up behind them and take them out stealthily that way. The bow is also a little worse in my opinion in previous versions. I love using the bow because it is stealthy, it doesn't make any noise, and if you're good at aiming with the bow, then you can take out a ton of enemies and reuse the arrows unless they break. And so it's a really good option, but in this game, it doesn't give you like a trail to show you where the path of the arrow is going to be. You kind of have to estimate, and so I ended up either undershooting or overshooting the arrow because I couldn't see that pathway. This ended up become so much a problem as I increased the firing distance of the bow, and I got better at aiming with this new bow reticle, but it's just something that I thought I'd mention. There's also a lot of slow moments in this game, and so when I say that the gameplay kind of takes a backseat to the atmosphere and the story, I mean it, where a lot of the time you're kind of just walking around a room with Ellie and trying to solve puzzles. You're grabbing ladders and you're placing them on ledges, and you're boosting Ellie up to a ledge so she could drop a ladder down to you, and Ellie can't even swim, and so oftentimes you're just kind of like swimming around looking for a pallet that Ellie can stand on as you move Ellie around. And so there's a lot of like really slow puzzle, but not interesting puzzles that you're doing. Most of the time when you're doing this, you're just kind of like talking with each other, and you can see the relationships building between these characters. I wouldn't necessarily call the gameplay super interesting at these parts. As you progress through the game, you kind of start going through the seasons, which is interesting because you're going to go into the bitter cold winter, and then you start exploring the woods in the spring, and you get to see the characters change their clothes. And I like those time skips because sometimes they leave you on a cliffhanger and then it's like the next season and it's a time skip and you're not exactly sure what happened and you have to catch up. And I think it does a good job really representing the amount of time that Joel and Ellie spend together as they are traveling across this apocalyptic America. If somehow you haven't had the story spoiled for you about this game, or you haven't seen the HBO series, I'm not going to talk too much about about the story as we progress through on, but I will say that the game definitely has one of the most impactful endings of a video game that I've ever played, and it brings up the most interesting moral dilemma that I think is still argued about on the internet even today. It really is like an interesting thinking piece. Once the game's over, you're just like, huh, I'm not sure if this was a good ending or a bad ending, and it just is so interesting. It's a really unique thought process, just in terms of like, how moral do you think this event was? And I'm being cryptic for a reason, because I really don't want to spoil this story if you haven't seen it yet. Just know that you will definitely be rewarded for playing through this game, and it's gonna stick with you probably forever. This game also comes bundled in with a DLC called Left Behind, and the idea of Left Behind is you're kind of bouncing between two time periods here. The first one is in between seasons fall and winter, and I'm not gonna spoil what happened in between those seasons, but the idea is you're playing as Ellie instead of Joel, and you're playing in this mall setting, which I think is a unique setting for an apocalypse full of zombies, because you get to go through all these different stores and a lot of opportunities for scavenging, but also just like kind of creepy, eerie setting. And you're also going to be bouncing back to Ellie's past, where it leads up to the events where she first got bit by the infected, which also takes place in a mall, but that kind of is more of a story as she is with her friend. And so I like the DLC because you get the gameplay, the intense combat in the between fall and winter, but then you also get the story building, the character building back in Ellie's past, where she just gets to act kind of like a silly kid, but also kind of has to deal with what it means to be growing up with her friend. Overall, I do really like this game, obviously, because I own 3 different copies of it. I've played through it many times. There's something about this game that really calls to me. Like, I just really like the story and the world and the characters in this game. Even the music, while subtle, is so on point. You just get like the quiet acoustic guitar sometimes, or when you're in the middle of combat, it's super intense. Oftentimes there's no music, which also lends itself to that gritty atmosphere. I just like so much about this game. So obviously I'm gonna give this game a 5 out of 5. Do I think that you need to play the PlayStation 5 version? Not necessarily. I would say at least the PlayStation 4 version. I'm sure that it's been a while since I played the PlayStation 3 version, but I'm sure that it's starting to show its age. But like, as far as like the PlayStation 5 features, it doesn't really use the haptic feedback on the triggers too much, at least as far as I could tell. And so the extra visuals are really nice though, I'd say. And hey, if you're not a gamer, I at least recommend that you watch the HBO show, which is also really amazing. Well guys, that's it for me. Let me know if you have any questions or comments about The Last of Us Part 1, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Bye.
I'm glad I know sign language. It's become quite handy.
That's silly.
That's really silly. I forgot how to throw a boomerang, but it came back to me.
Yeah.
When a clock is hungry, it goes back 4 seconds. Oh,
Yeah.
get it?
Yeah.
It goes back
4 seconds.
for seconds.
Yeah.